We ask that you please be respectful to all candidates. Personal attacks are definitely not welcome. And we also ask you that you confine your issues and your questions to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex community. The candidates will have a maximum of 2 minutes per question to answer. After 1.5 minutes, the bell will ring once. After 2 minutes, the bell will ring twice. And the candidates, your time will be up and it will be time to duck oranges and all sorts of things. Okay, so can I ask the first question?
No, I've got one.
Well, I'd just like to know, who would any of you turn gay for?
I think we'll start on the right there with Tim.
Too late.
Okay, Corey.
Serious question?
Yeah, serious question.
That wasn't a serious question?
No, it was a serious question.
I want to see the answer, Tim.
Is that turn gay for or straight for?
Richard?
Meryl Streep, maybe?
Anybody else?
I'm pretty flexible.
Any single girls?
Anybody else?
Too frightened of my wife to answer that.
Lindsay's too frightened of his wife to answer.
Okay. Ladies and gents, inside the one-page flyer that you see and also on page 7 in front of the candidates and various passed around is an assessment of the candidates' responses. I'd like to go through each of the individual parties and have comment based on that assessment, and in the context of that assessment, why exactly should we vote for you?
Sorry, okay, yes, no, I've seen it. Well, I think in a sense, all I can do is reiterate my 5-minute spiel, which is that the only way that progressive change gets achieved in Australia is by electing Labor governments. And although that's not the only thing that's required, community campaigns are crucial, and as I did acknowledge, other parties do make a contribution. But one thing is clear from history: the only way you achieve progressive social change in this country, state or federal level, is electing Labor governments. That's why you should vote for me.
As I alluded to in my speech, an election's not about one issue or 8 issues, it's about a whole range of issues, which is why I did start off by talking about issues that affect the entire community, the economy and things like that. When it comes to the specific issues outlined in the response there, you can read the detail of our responses. But I think the government has acted in various fields and it's committed to take further action.
We'll come to you in a second.
Yeah. I think you can vote for us quite confidently because we support all the demands, and like I outlined, including the demand of an advisory committee. So I think that's a very good basis to vote for Socialist Alliance. You also know where our preferences are going, and you know they're not going to go to Family First or the DLP, some of our best buddies. But I think the other reason you should vote for us is because we help build the movements. And contrary to what Lindsay said again, progressive change has happened because of pressure from ordinary people in the movements. Socialist Alliance activists have also been part of establishing the National Day of Action nationally for same-sex marriage rights and equal love. So we don't just come out on election day. We're actually around all year, and we help work with people on a whole range of different campaigns all year round.
Well, I think the survey results speak for themselves, so I think you can be confident based on that and our track record that we'll be able to represent the issue loudly and proudly. I reiterate what Margareta said, and that is that it's not actually politicians who change things, it's people who change them. And politicians usually come to issues very, very late, and they come to issues because there's political expediency involved and there's a political impact to not making those decisions. And I actually think it's a little patronising and maybe a little offensive to suggest that in fact it's just the Labor Party. I think it's people in this room have resulted from changes.
That's absolutely contrary to what I said.
Okay, you'll have another your turn to respond, Lindsay. I do think it's a little offensive to suggest that. I mean, if you look historically at what the...
It's a lie about what I've said.
I'll try and perhaps finish this without any more interruptions, but I can't guarantee it. The fact is, if you look at what's happened in terms of progressive politics All sides of politics have achieved changes. The Liberal Party's been responsible for important changes, progressive changes. The Labor Party has, but equally they've dragged their heels on some very, very key issues. On the issues of race, we can thank the Labor Party for the White Australia policy. On a number of other issues, what it's actually taken is the people in this room to make sure that they ensure that they don't let their politicians off the hook, and the best way not to let them off the hook is to use your vote on November 24.
Well, you can see from the little booklet that the Democrat have a tick next to every single demand. But I think, all of the minor parties here represented here today have good policies on these issues. I think what distinguishes the Democrats is our strong track record, but also the way that we use the parliamentary system to our full advantage. We're very active in the committee system, trying to find answers to some more complex ways of, dealing with some of these issues in terms of establishing relationship registers, some of the finer details of really implementing the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission recommendations and so on. We've always put forward amendments to legislation that's discriminatory, and that's something that the other parties, the Greens and Family First, certainly don't do that to nearly the same extent. I think we were the only party to try to amend the Judges' Pensions Act when it came before the Parliament at the last sitting. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Rohan. I've been a member of this electorate, voter in this electorate for the last 5 years. My question's to Lindsay Tanner. I'm quite proud to have a progressive member as my Member of Parliament, my local Member of Parliament. But given your rise within the party, and if the polls are right, you'll be the Finance Minister after November 24, and given that this is an unprecedentedly Conservative Labor government that we're probably going to be electing, how can you promise to us that you will fight within your party and on the floor of the House of Representatives to see those 58 pieces of legislation amended as quickly as possible? And I know you have to be very careful because you don't get to speak out against party policy, especially given you're going to be within the inner cabinet, but what will you be able to do? Thank you.
Because that's an election commitment of the Labor Party, and by the way, one of the reasons that's an election commitment is because there are progressive members of the Labor caucus continually pushing for things of that kind and achieving results within a team which has its constraints. That is the reality of a major party that everybody faces. But because it's an election commitment, that means that it will be pursued, certainly by me, and I'm absolutely confident by my party. Don't underestimate the complexity and difficulty of actually putting it in place. 58 pieces of legislation with all sorts of fine detailed issues that have to be worked through to actually achieve the outcome without necessarily creating who knows what kind of unintended consequences as you amend the legislation is in itself a very major task. So it's not simply a roll into the House and whack it through kind of thing. That will actually be a major task. You can rest assured I will be fighting tooth and nail to make sure that happens. And can I say, for the third time, the reason I was getting upset before because of the standard left sectarian performance by the Greens, I'll say it again. Social change, progressive social change in this country is not only achieved by Labor governments. It is achieved by community campaigns, as various people have said, and it is achieved by with the contributions from other smaller political parties, but it isn't achieved without Labor governments. It isn't achieved by Liberal governments. That's why electing a Labor government is so important. So I reject the suggestion that I have said that only Labor governments do these things. Labor governments are essential to delivering them, but they're only part of the forces that actually produce those outcomes.